This will be part 6 in my series of using my Leica MP film camera on different film stock and using my different Leica lenses. I'm going back to the Fujifilm 400 film stock, a good everyday film, but this time will be the first time using my 75mm Apo-Summicron f2.0. Until now, I've only shot with 28mm and 35mm on the MP, so the 75mm will give me a much different perspective, and I wanted to try out the colors and the sharpness and the bokeh effect on the 75mm on the MP. I've used this 75 Apo-Summicron on my M11, and this lens is extremely sharp, and the colors are very vivid, and it gives off a very good bokeh effect. But for me, using a manual film camera is much more challenging, and in the end, I've gotten mixed results with the MP. Let's talk about the camera body first, and picking this up and using this never fails to disappoint. It's so compact and it fits well into my small hands, but it feels so solid and it has a very nice hefty weight to it. The Q3 has a very good build quality, but after picking up the MP, the Q3 almost feels like a toy in comparison. And the M11 is a step up from the Q3, but it still does not feel quite as nice to use as the MP. The Leica M11 dials do not feel as solid, and it still has those plastic buttons on the back. The exterior is almost all metal and leather, very few plastic or rubber parts to it. And the design is so simple and easy to use. You have the film counter window on the right, the shutter release, the advanced lever, and the shutter speed button, and the film rewind knob all the way to the left. And on the front, you have the rewind lever, the battery cover, the lens release button, and the frame selector button on the other side. There's no red dot on the front, but there is a Leica script on the top plate, which I wish it didn't have. I was choosing between the MA and this MP. The MA does not have an internal light meter, and it does not have the Leica script or the red dot. But I can't shoot without a light meter, and I did not want to use an external one. So I went with the MP, and I think I like this glossy black paint finish much better than the MA. For my accessories, I just have the standard Leica shoulder strap, and I have a half case made by Artisan and Artist in this black leather, which is very soft and supple and gives it good protection. Mounting the lens on the camera body does add a good amount of bulk to it. The lens barrel is not extremely wide, but it is long, so it does stick out. But the build quality on this lens is also excellent. The aperture ring is clicky and easy to move, but it never seemed to move out of place accidentally on me. And the focus ring is smooth and silky, but it does extend out further as you close in focus. And there's no focus tab on the bottom to help with focusing. I'll take a closer look at some of my results. And in terms of colors, I think this has much more to do with the film stock than the lens. And here I think the colors came out fairly realistic and lifelike, but some of the photos were slightly pale and slightly washed out and had more of a vintage character. Looking on my computer screen, these images do appear sharp when I focus correctly, and especially when I stop down the lens. The 75 Apo-Summicron should be a good bokeh lens, but in reality I only got a few shots with bokeh using this on my film camera. Here I focused on the flowers and the background was blurred out, but not extremely. And I'm focusing more on the foreground here, and even here there is some slight blurriness in the background. But I could not take full advantage of the bokeh power on this lens because of the lighting. A lot of the times I did have to stop down the aperture just to get the right exposure. With film, I'm stuck with the same 400 film speed, and I can only adjust the exposure with the shutter speed and the aperture. I could have used an ND filter to have more versatility in using a wide open aperture, but I just didn't want to carry an extra filter and take the time to put it on and take it off. In terms of the focal length, I did enjoy shooting on the 75. It allowed me to shoot from further away, and it didn't have to get so close up. In conclusion, I had another great experience with my Leica MP camera, and the Fujifilm 400 film is a great everyday film stock. But except for the focal length on this lens, I think this 75mm Apu Summicron is just overpowered for what I'm using it for with the analog film. This lens is extremely sharp and capable of very sharp rendering, but the film just doesn't take full advantage of that. And the 75 2.0 is also capable of producing a very extreme bokeh, but I'm just not able to do this predictably on my MP because of the lighting situation, and I often need to stop down to a smaller aperture. And this lens also adds a good amount of bulk to the camera, and I prefer a smaller camera. And the advantage of the MP is that the camera body is so small, and adding a long lens onto the camera body just negates that advantage. So I don't think I'll be shooting 75 on my MP, and I'll use my M11 whenever I want to use the 75 lens. But for the MP, I think my favorite lens on this camera so far is my 28mm Almaret.